Warning! The following contains nothing but spoilers to Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Spirit of Justice. Long ago, the kingdom of Kurraine lived in harmony, but then everything changed when the queen's house was set on fire. Druk, a Kurrainese defense attorney at the time, was blamed for the incident, and thus the courtroom was changed forever. Now, under the Defense Culpability Act, anyone caught defending a criminal would receive the same sentence as that criminal. Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Spirit of Justice is the latest game from what has now become one of the most popular adventure game franchises. After Dual Destinies revisited all the tropes that made the series great, I was hoping that the next game would mix things up, and that's exactly what they did. Now, there's a lot to talk about, so let's jump right into Case 1, the Foreign Tournament. We begin our adventure with Phoenix traveling to the kingdom of Kurraine to meet up with Maya Fey. Here, we meet Aldi, your guide, and since this is an Ace Attorney game, he quickly becomes accused of murder. As it turns out, the court system in Kurraine is even more corrupt than back home in America. Lawyers don't even exist anymore because of the Defense Culpability Act, and this is exactly why the Ace Attorney series needed a change of scenery. Now that Phoenix is in a new environment, we get to enjoy that wonderful judicial satire that the series is known for. Although I'm not about to guess which country this is making fun of. Now, while Kurrainese courts don't use lawyers, they do have access to a supernatural process called the Divination Seance, where the victim's last memories can be seen. The person who performs this ritual is Rifa, the royal priestess. She firmly believes that her vision shows an objective truth and becomes furious when Phoenix dares to question her insights. Just like Miles Edgeworth, Rifa begins the game clashing with Phoenix, and I think everyone can see where this is going, but more on that later.
O dance of devotion, guide the victim's soul to me, so that we may receive their final memories in the pool of souls.
After seeing her perform the dance of devotion, we get to see this new game mechanic in the flesh. Here, we are presented with the final moments that the victim saw, and naturally, each vision makes our client look incredibly guilty. But the key word here is look, because the visions also capture the final sound, smells, and even feelings experienced by the deceased. Overall, this is a refreshing new gimmick. It's enjoyable, it demands the same kind of lateral thinking used in cross-examinations, and it's beautifully tied into the storyline. My only complaint is that almost every victim just so happened to die while hearing something incredibly important. Seriously, over half of the visions are solved with the question, why did the victim hear that noise? Back to our case, after Rifa's insights get torn apart by Phoenix, she storms out of the courtroom, allowing for us to witness the epic showdown between Phoenix Wright and Gaston Payne. It goes about as well as you would expect, and Phoenix Wright becomes the first defense attorney in well over a decade to win the case. Right before leaving, we get some kind words from the Ministry of Justice, and we learn about a rebellious faction seeking to overthrow the throne. In our second case, we find ourselves back in Los Tokyo, where Athena and Apollo are about to watch Trusy Wright perform her magic show. For Trusy, this is a pretty smart move. The Gramarye magicians have a pretty terrible reputation, and Trusy is trying to revive the troupe all by herself. Of course, this is the opening scene to an Ace Attorney case, so, Well, it took a while, but Trusy is finally directly involved with the plot. This scene alone gives her character way more depth than any of her prior appearances. Through this case, we learn that Trusy is a rigorous perfectionist with some incredible showmanship skills. We also learn that her biggest fear is making a mistake. Even in a routine she's practiced thousands of times. This is exactly what was missing from her first appearance in Apollo Justice Ace Attorney. Of course, she doesn't need to be too worried, considering her agency has probably the best legal team in the entire country, if not the whole world. After Apollo and Athena investigate the crime scene, they discover that Magnifique Gramarye is an even bigger asshole than we previously realized, and fired a magician from the troupe, utterly humiliating him in the process, and ensuring that he would come seeking revenge at the most inopportune moment. This case also introduces our latest prosecutor, the Buddhist-inspired Nayuta Sadmahi. On one hand, this is pretty much business as usual. Prosecutor is our antagonist, Prosecutor is revealed to have a deep personal connection with one of our playable characters, Prosecutor comes through for us at the 11th hour. But unlike his predecessors, at no point does it ever feel like he has an unfair advantage, and overall embodies the archetype of the grand chess master who always thinks 3 steps ahead. It's really nice to see a prosecutor who doesn't feel the need to play dirty. Okay, maybe he does play a little dirty. Probably the most unexpected side plot would be how Nayuta works with Emma Sky, our detective for this game. Yes, Emma Sky is back, and she's even better than ever! We know this because she proudly wears a forensics band on her arm. While this may seem like the most transparent way of saying we fixed her character, the real joke is that nothing about her situation has changed. She's still a detective, her boss just went, you know what, fine, I don't care, do your forensic stuff. Overall, thanks to her appearance here, Emma Sky might be one of my favorite recurring characters. But although her attitude is way more positive, her character is far from static. Despite being a rigorous scientist, she's not a great detective and starts off extremely biased in favor of the defense because Trusy is her friend. If you like Apollo and Trusy as characters, then you're gonna love this case. And if you like magic, then you're in for a treat because the villain used his skills as a magician to commit murder and frame Trusy while he was nowhere near the scene of the crime. Oh, and the best part? One of the twists is a very clear reference to the Prestige. Definitely one of the best magic-themed cases in the series. Meanwhile, back in the kingdom of Kurraine, it's time for the moment that everyone was waiting for.
How do you fare, Mr. Wright? It's been many a day.
Who might you be? Maya?
Maya is back, and she mostly hasn't changed. But while she's still an overly enthusiastic spaz who wears her emotions on her sleeve, she's actually grown up quite a bit and has been secretly hiding her ability to channel spirits because, in the kingdom of Kurraine, only the royal family are supposed to have that power. Of course, they can't stay in chat for long because Maya has to go perform a sacred Kurrainese ritual in a far remote location with a single other person. Oh my god, no! Okay, I do have to object. Look, I'm glad to see Maya again, but come on. At this rate, Emma should just give Maya one of her spy cameras, because this is now the 3rd time that this has happened. I mean, what's next? Is she gonna get kidnapped so that Phoenix has to defend a criminal again? Aside from her role being far too similar to prior games, this case is actually really good. It's got a bit of everything. Good humor, good characters, good mystery, plenty of comedic highs, and some very tragic lows. Hell, this is one of the few times that Phoenix Wright actually loses and Maya is pronounced guilty, until she's saved by a second murder conviction. Instead of Maya following Phoenix around, this time it's Raifa, leading to some pretty funny moments. Like Edgeworth, she starts off as a talented but flawed individual and has her worldview challenged by Phoenix Wright. After realizing her mistake, she starts to question herself and accompanies Phoenix in order to understand why she was mistaken. But the best part of this case happens at the climax, when our heroes have no other option than to cross-examine the deceased victim himself. That's right, we actually get to see Maya perform her spirit channeling technique. I really hope this goes better than when her mother tried this. Okay, that's a lot more instantaneous than I had imagined. Throughout most of the trial, Phoenix has a very hard time proving that there was anyone else at the scene of the crime. That is, until the truth is revealed. This was a suicide. This is something we really haven't seen. Suicide has only been used in Trials and Tribulations, and even then it was in a very different context. Truly, nothing says Ace Attorney more than Phoenix Wright cross-examining a dead victim of a mysterious murder who's lying to protect his loved one by framing Maya Fey. In the end, this sob story turns out to be the final straw, and the rebels declare that the revolution must now begin.
And now for something completely different.
Just kidding! Let's see what Athena Sykes is up to. Okay, so just like case number 2, this doesn't connect to the overarching story at all. Aside from Prosecutor Nayuta, this case might as well exist in a completely different game. Also, what happened to Athena Sykes? Apparently her shtick is now being treated as a child and getting compared to birds. That being said, Athena and Simon play off of each other extremely well. Athena's oversensitivity contrasts with Simon's stoicism, and seeing these two trying to work together is highly entertaining. By the end of the case, Athena even picked up on some of Simon's persuasion tactics. Either give these two their own spin-off, or give them a larger role in the next game, please. Because this is more of a standalone case, this turnabout exists for its premise more than anything else. It's a murder of a famous Rakugo storyteller. What's Rakugo storytelling, you might ask? It's a Japanese traditional type of comedic storytelling with a 400-year history. Artists would use minimal props such as fans to convey different characters. And no, I'm not Nayuta, and my research is nowhere near that thorough. Since this case is designed for Athena Sykes, the twist is a psychological one. It turns out that the key witness has multiple personalities, including a secret hidden one that only appears when the other three are unconscious. Unfortunately, while the Rakugo witness makes this case, the true murderer falls flat. It's a woman who resented her father and murdered him for not letting her follow in his footsteps. The whole ordeal is played off like it's some silly misunderstanding, and the tone is way too cheery for someone who just murdered her own father. Oh well, at least the villain was clever enough to dispose of the murder weapon right in front of Simon's nose without him even realizing it. Alright, now it's time for the revolution. Kind of. We begin this case with rebel leader Druk visiting his adopted son Apollo. Yep, you heard that right. After being born, Apollo apparently ended up in the kingdom of Kurraine, where he was adopted by former defense attorney, now turned rebel leader Druk. Oh yeah, and Nayuta is his brother. For such a strange premise, I can't find any contradictions. Apollo's not exactly the kind of guy who talks a lot about his past, and we've now finally discovered what actually happened to his real father. So, with the revolution around the corner, why did Druk decide to suddenly come out and see his son? There is a very specific reason, and it's by far the best twist in the game. I'll spoil it when the time is right, but for now, Druk and Apollo enjoy some surrogate father-son time while they go hunting for the Founder's Orb. Once you find out the twist, this is actually the game's saddest moments. And now we arrive at something very interesting. After Paul Atishan, the politician, demands the orb, claiming it rightfully belongs to him, a familiar voice says, "That's right, it's Phoenix Wright versus Apollo Justice and Athena Sykes." Talk about a premise that sells itself. Here we are against the turnabout terror himself in a civil case that shockingly turns into a murder case. It's got everything you could expect from this scenario, especially when Phoenix turns this case on its head and his objection theme song starts playing. What's amazing about this situation is that Apollo remains completely unfazed. He's confident that his relationship with Phoenix will not be affected because he's just that awesome. While he does use the same techniques as his mentor, Apollo is more rational and down-to-earth in his approach. Yet despite some excellent clashing of lawyers, it's the key witness that really wins the show. Meet Army Bum. Army is terrified of the outside world, and her army shtick represents her desire for protection and safety. So why is she so scared? Well, a while back she was trapped inside a burning building. In an act of heartfelt bravery, her mother grabbed her in her arms and jumped out of a window, facing certain death just to save her life. Since then, Army has been terrified of ever leaving her house, all of which has been exacerbated by her father being found murdered. Before long, it becomes very obvious that Paul Atishan is the murderer and has been blackmailing Phoenix Wright. Apollo doesn't quite catch on immediately, but Athena's naturally the one to notice. Okay, this is getting ridiculous. Look, I'm excited to see Maya, but so far she's just been relegated to getting blamed for murder and kidnapped again. Sure, those things happened in the original trilogy, but they were few and far between, many moments where we spent a lot of time just getting to know Maya. So now that this case is solved, it's time for our merry band of lawyers to go to Kurraine in order to rescue Maya Fey. And by rescue Maya Fey, I mean get caught up in another murder. At the royal palace, Druk finds himself accused of murdering the Ministry of Justice, and now Apollo Justice must defend his own father. But right before going into court, Druk gives some very odd foreshadowing. Now we arrive at the final boss. The Queen herself has decided to take the stand, and now we get an Ace Attorney double battle. Unfortunately, final boss and obvious villain Queen Kura'in does not live up to the hype. We've had villains such as Manfred von Karma and David Gant who used authority to control the courtroom, and going up against them felt extremely oppressive. Queen Kura'in, meanwhile, just threatens to execute us as part of the Defense Culpability Act, a pressure we've been under since the beginning of the game. What Kura'in does do very well is act like a horrible mother towards Raifa, forcing her to perform a divination seance, even though the murder victim in this case was her own father. But this grand finale is still worth the wait, as the final twist is done perfectly. Ace Attorney games like to lay out puzzle pieces one at a time, eventually hoping that you'll somehow put them together on your own. As we dig deeper and deeper into this murder, a tragic fact becomes crystal clear. Apollo realizing this conclusion is easily the game's best moment. That's right. Droop didn't just show up on Apollo's doorstep for no reason. He was being temporarily brought back to life through the power of spirit channeling and chose to spend his borrowed time with his adopted son. In the end, thanks to the combined efforts of Phoenix, Apollo, Raifa, and Nayuta, the Queen is finally defeated and the DC Act is lifted. And then, Nayuta, who finally rejoined the rebellion halfway through the trial, asks Apollo to stay in Kurraine and take over his father's office. Wow, are we actually saying goodbye to Apollo Justice? Well, I guess he deserves it. His first game was a rough start, but his role in Dual Destinies, and especially in this game, have proven Apollo to be an exceptionally talented lawyer whose personality is distinct from his boss. Whilst the Western title of the game may technically be Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, it's no doubt that Apollo is the spirit of justice. And that's all for my analysis. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what you thought of this new game. Special thanks for this episode go to Z Slicer once again for allowing me to use his game footage.